Just like that, we can go from having a bit of a depressing start of the transfer window. One link and one report from several Northeast journalists is all it takes to ignite that spark in the Newcastle United fan base. Anthony Elanga, I'm sure you've seen it by now, was reported by several Northeast journalists last night. Eddie Howe wants him. Eddie Howe is interested in bringing him into Newcastle, and he's someone we have our eyes on. But not just Elanga, according to some journalists. The Telegraph this morning, or within the last hour actually, stated that Newcastle is still in for Joao Pedro. Newcastle is now pushing ahead to try and sign Joao Pedro. So what's going on here? Elanga or Pedro, or both? Could Newcastle actually be going in for both players in our attack? Is it possible? Can Newcastle afford it? Will they do it? And is it sustainable and beneficial for Newcastle long term? Because not just those two players, of course, we need goalkeeper. Trafford's an obvious example. Need a centre half. Mark Gee, again, is an obvious example. So if you include those two players and two attackers, not to mention we'll probably try and get one more player perhaps in somewhere, that's a lot of money. You're probably talking £200 million plus. And can Newcastle do that in this transfer window? To answer your question, I think we can. I don't think there's anything now to say that Newcastle can't spend £200 million and can't bring 4 or 5 players in that are going to cost a good amount of money. But long term, next summer, we would need to sell up. And it's not just selling up next summer as well. Depending on where we finish in the league table and how we do in Champions League football, could potentially mean it will not bring much in next summer either. And that's perhaps a problem at a time which we can focus on. But for now, to answer your question, yes, I think Newcastle under PSR laws can't afford to bring these players in. And speaking of PSR, we have a full video prepared and planned out to talk you properly through it and how Newcastle can look towards the loopholes and how Newcastle can exploit the system. So stay tuned and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss that video tomorrow. Now, back on topic, Anthony Elanga is the first one I wanted to talk about. 17 goal contributions in 38 games last season for Nottingham Forest. Now, before we talk about Elanga, because he's actually addressed the Newcastle United links today, not to mention he addressed it as well last month when we were linked to him previously. In our point of view, Elanga's, I wouldn't say a problem, but the issue being is that every single outright option that will be brought in this summer will all be compared to Brian Mbeumo's transfer valuation at Manchester United. And that's the first issue we're going to see in social media, I guess, is that Manchester United fans, opposition fans are just going to look and go, well, Mbeumo, £70 million. Elanga, in my opinion, I think he's worth £50 million from these goal contributions last season. I think he's very good. But there is no way Nottingham Forest will accept £50 million. So he's going to be right up there as well. You're talking the £60 to £70 million range. Now, I don't think he's worth that much, but there's a Newcastle United tax and there's also a team that doesn't want to sell. So ultimately, I think he will cost a similar amount to Mbeumo. Now, these two are going to get compared non-stop next season, which could not be in Newcastle's best interest. But Elanga will be much better for player wages. It won't be 250 grand a week. It won't be him just wanting to be greedy and take everything out of the football club. Elanga is an Eddie Howe man. Elanga is someone that wants to improve on the Eddie Howe system and is not solely going to a football club for monetary gain. He wants to go to Newcastle to be a better player, and he has a great connection with Isak already at Sweden. Now, in terms of his comments last summer and what Elanga has said, Isak talked to me about it. I'm focused on Nottingham and then we'll see what happens. We have a good relationship and good chemistry when we play together, but I have a contract with Nottingham. It's clear that Newcastle are interested. It means I am playing good football when a big club shows interest. Nice message there. Nice, respectable, doesn't show any arrogance and speaks well about his connection with Isak. And he's also spoke about it today. So he said today there was a lot of talk. I focused on what I can do, and my focus today was on the match. In football, there are always rumours. The most important thing is that I focus on what I can control. Again, he's not giving much away at this moment in time, but he's fully aware of the transfer links surrounding him. I think in his point of view, he knows there's a club knocking on the door, and it's not in Forest's control. It's in their hands to what to do with the situation. In my opinion, I think Elanga's a very good sign for Newcastle. I think he is. I've seen mixed opinions from Newcastle fans, but I think he fits Eddie Howe's team, and I think he fits Eddie Howe's system. But Joao Pedro throws a spanner into the works, because if we're looking for Joao Pedro as well, how does he get into the team? Because surely he doesn't want to be number 2 at Newcastle. So if Newcastle was to sign Joao Pedro, would they change formation? How would they work both these players into the team? And this is one where I'm a bit perplexed about what Newcastle would do here, because I don't think Joao Pedro would sign as a number 2. But contribution wise, I think he's quite good as well. But when you look at the valuation, Brighton's always historically a hard club to buy from. Brighton have got massive prices on players. Caicedo, the obvious example, £120 million to bring him into Chelsea. So Newcastle running for both players. It would cost you well over £100 million. I think depth-wise, you have an amazing attacking depth. You've Gordon Barnes on the left, Murphy Elanga on the right, and then you've got Isak, Pedro, at this moment in time, Wilson and Asula in the attack. I mean, that's a bulky attack full of a lot of good players. So for Newcastle, that attacking depth is quality. You went from a team that's struggling with depth in the attack to a team that has an amazing amount of depth in the attack, and it gives Eddie Howe a lot of options in terms of what he can do. But I still feel like at this moment in time, Joao Pedro just seems to be perhaps not the right option for Newcastle. Not that I don't like him, not that I think he's a bad player, because he's 100% not. But I just still don't feel like him and Elanga at this moment in time is attainable. Not that it won't happen, because I think it is possible, but I just don't think both of them would work at Newcastle. I feel like it's probably one or the other one, because I feel like Newcastle still needs a number 2 for a striker. Well, I don't think Joao Pedro would be happy being number 2, and that's my honest take on it. As for our options out there, we'll speak a lot more about this tomorrow, but Crystal Palace still is in quite a precarious situation, because it is entirely possible they are kicked out of European football because of their ownership, partially owning a different football club. So Palace have been unable to sell that share of the club up. So currently they're going out of European football. Now the reason why I brought that up is because, well, Mark Gay has 12 months left in his contract. Crystal Palace know he could leave on a free next summer. So they want to make money from this guy, and if they want to sell now and actually be able to bring some revenue in for Mark Gay, it's now or never for them. It's a now or never approach. And if it was the case, an unfortunate case where they would be kicked out of European football, I think it's a massive head turner for some of their players. That could be massive. And for Newcastle, they'll be on top of us without trying to take advantage of someone else's downfall, but you've got to be ruthless and you have to be a bully in the Premier League. Newcastle will be on top of that. So keep an eye on Crystal Palace. If they're kicked out of European football, Brighton goes in, which means if that happens, Joao Pedro would be even harder to bring in. So if that was to occur, Palace or Brighton, whichever team misses out, that's the team Newcastle probably should be trying to buy players from. But keep an eye on this one, because Palace were in trouble. I hear it's sad to see, and it's their first European time ever in their club history, so they deserve it. They beat Manchester City fair and square. Brighton do not deserve it. They haven't earned the opportunity to play European football. They missed out last season. Palace are the ones that deserve it, and they've been screwed over by UEFA laws. So we'll see what happens. Newcastle need to jump on top of it, though, if Crystal Palace are kicked out. I'm sorry to come across as the villain, but Newcastle need to be able to do it, because if it was us in that situation, teams would pick on us, so we need to do the same to ours. I don't want to be that villain, but that's a good way of getting potentially Mark Gay into the football club. So keep an eye on it, because that's going to be very big for Newcastle in this window. But interesting news coming away from this video. I'm still surprised to see Joao Pedro being reported, even with Elanga now starting to become that clear option Newcastle is going to go in for. Is it possible we could bring both of them in? At this moment in time, I would still probably be more lenient to say no, but I don't think it's impossible. It's perhaps the message you guys may want to hear. I think it is possible Newcastle could do it, but I personally don't think we will at this moment in time. That could all change though, so do not take my opinion with a pinch of salt, because it's just an opinion. Newcastle could get both of those players in if they wanted to. It will cost a lot of money though, and I just can't see Joao Pedro being a number 2, which is why I personally would say no at this moment in time. But keep an eye on it. James Trafford, keep an eye on. Mark Gay, keep an eye on, because I think the 4 targets that Newcastle are going in for are becoming clear now. So keep an eye on which ones Newcastle make. I think especially towards the start of July, Newcastle are going to be bringing a couple in. So let's see which ones happen. Elanga for me is probably the one I want the most. I really like the look of Anthony Elanga as a completely different player style to our team, much quicker than Jacob Murphy. And with all due respect to Murphy, because he's had an unbelievable season, Elanga's a better player than him. He is an improvement in my opinion, and he would get into Newcastle's team well. I'm looking forward to seeing what him and Isak can do in our attack, because that Swedish connection, I think it's a possibility next season. I think he is the guy to go for now, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Newcastle would do with Nottingham Forest. But price wise, it's going to cost a lot of money. So let's see what happens. Take care, guys. Let me know your opinions down below. Are you Elanga in, or would you want Newcastle to get a different option? Let me know your opinions.